All right, let's continue now to take a look at the week ahead on our economics front. Our economics desk has a lot coming in store, of course. For this chat, we're going to be joined in studio by economics reporter, SABC News Economics Reporter, Katlego Legodi. Kat, good afternoon. I know that there's a lot to be expected. We're obviously in Youth Month, and I wonder if we can speak to some of the statistics coming through and the impact that this is going to have on the Youth Economic Productivity report that's also set to be announced. I think at this point, 46.1%. It's not looking great for the youth on that front.
Most definitely. A very good afternoon to you, Liesl, and to our viewers at home. We are in the thick of Youth Month, and you find youth just taking stock of where they find themselves now. As the economics desk, we've been looking at how then they are performing in terms of the economy, looking at their productiveness, their competitiveness, and where then they move in terms of how then they are navigating also issues attributed to substance abuse. And most of them would find themselves there in the dark. Productivity South Africa has been working with the International Development Agency, just looking at how then we find ourselves as South Africa year in, year out. You'll see them releasing a report around this time, giving us a sense of how we are faring as South Africa. Last year, we were ranked at 67 out of 67, meaning that we are the highest in terms of youth unemployment globally. And this is something that has been flagged by Productivity South Africa, looking at how then we don't find them active in the economy. We don't see them starting up in terms of entrepreneurship and the likes. So the competitiveness is a cause for concern. So this week we'll see Statistics South Africa, or not Statistics South Africa, but Productivity South Africa releasing this year's report in terms of where we find ourselves. So it's still bleak, really, for a youth. And when you see the quarterly labor force survey being released as well, you see that there's a cause for concern. There's some of those that are not even active in terms of looking for job, but those that are even within the space. There's so much pressures that they're dealing with, and we see them raising really issues with substance abuse, to say that we see young people also just really finding themselves navigating these issues of substance abuse because of where they find themselves. They're not productive.
And you know, Kat, I mean, those are micro dynamics, because we're also seeing a shifting geopolitical landscape and the macro dynamics. So we just spoke to our international editor, Sophie Mukwena, and she was speaking about the G7 summit. You know, you've got that Israel-Iran conflict that's currently happening, and that has impacted markets. That also impacts the rand at large, but the direct impact on consumers as well. Talk to us a little bit what's coming through at this front. So how are markets faring up?
So it's going down really in the Middle East when you look at the Iran and Israel war.
Literally.
And really what is happening would see most of us just looking at how then that affects us. Emerging markets, we are an emerging market in South Africa, and we look at how then all of the implications would fare on the rand as well. The rand is a little bit volatile as we speak right now. It was faring very well at some point. It was at 17 rand 67 cents, and people were saying that it's really starting to look up, looking at all of these developments geopolitically or what was happening in the United States. So as we see Iran, as we see Israel, and that playing itself out, a lot of people looking at how then that is going to affect the oil price, and how then we are a large importer of oil as South Africa, and looking at some of those implications. They'll have implications on the rand, they'll have implications on food inflation, transport inflation, because they're all tied to the oil. And as we see all of these issues playing themselves out, a lot of people worried about the oil shipments that will go through Iran, and just looking at how then all of that will have an implication. Here at home, it's a little bit dire because we are navigating the fuel levy that kicked in as well. So a lot of people saying that we were kind of promised that, you know, looking at how the oil price is doing, how the oil is doing, we won't see that much of a knock-on effect on prices, the food prices or inflation and the likes. But as we see Iran and Israel playing itself out, a lot of people are just pointing, a lot of economists as well, they're looking at the implications of this on the fuel prices, and we can expect then that if it continues to rage like this, it will have an impact on the price of oil.
I can't imagine the role of SARB at this point, given the review that's also coming to the fore, because beyond monetary policy, there's financial stability that has to be maintained, but also curbing inflation, stabilizing it, so that our outlook is obviously driven towards investor confidence. What can we expect on that front as well?
So the economy moves on sentiments. A lot of people would be looking at how then all of these issues would play themselves out. So we look at investors as well spooked by by what is happening in terms of the geopolitics. So we look at how all of that will affect inflation as well. The Reserve Bank, you're right, they'll be releasing a report looking at financial stability on Thursday, and we are likely to hear them touch on this because South Africa is really in tricky territory. When you look at the economy, we are in a slow growth economy, and things would be really, they'll be looking at how we protect the markets, how we protect the financial stability of the country. We were looking at capitalizing on the fact that we are the presidents of the G20 for this year, but all of these issues that are playing themselves out, we don't have control over, like the geopolitics. So we see a lot of people looking at sentiments and how then we safeguard even the consumer in hand. So here we'll see them releasing this report. It's released twice annually. So this will be the first time that they're releasing this report for the year 2025. They'll kind of give us a sense of how then things are expected to move in terms of the financial stability of the country. But we are coming also at the back of an economy that has not been doing well. The structural reforms need to kick in here as per Operation Vulindlela 2.0. And those will start to see maybe coming through as we go into the second half of the year. And a lot of people are really keenly looking at the markets, the bond markets, and how the consumers are really moving from hand to mouth in navigating this economy. But a lot of people just attributing this to the geopolitics that we don't have control over. So I suspect that the Reserve Bank governor, as well as we go into the week, will give us a sense of how then, the financial stability of the country will be impacted by some of these issues that we don't have control over.
Yeah, and I mean, just speaking of reforms as we wrap up there, is it easy? Can we speak about reforms at this point, given what's happening in this, in this immediate future, the Jubilee Commission on debt and international finance, architecture reforms? What's going to come as a result of that?
That is also looking at the economy in terms of architectural, reforms and where we find ourselves as South Africa. But this is tied to the Vatican as well. So we see a lot of people faring and taking stock of where we find ourselves economically. So we'll see them as well take stock this week as well as we go into the week. The economists are there as well. It's a large entity that looks and works with the Vatican globally to look at where then the economies, the emerging economies are faring. And we as South Africa will also be taking stock in terms of this report that will be released this week. But most of the people just looking to ensure that as we go into the week, all of these efforts will have to solve for the youth because we are then worried about young people tomorrow. We'll see them also taking stock in terms of Youth Day. He just spoke to Ndete Seth, and he was also just reflecting on the resilience of the youth of 1976. But the youth of today, do we see them also being resilient, and can they more or less move the way that we saw the youth of 1976 move in terms of being active in the economy? There are a lot of structural issues that are not letting them to flourish as much as they should. So we'll be expecting to look at how then they will be accommodated also going into Youth Day tomorrow.
Conversation starters on the economic front. Thank you for your time at this hour. Wishing you all the best, of course, with the week ahead. Katlego Legodi, the economics reporter at the SABC, weighing in on what we can expect on the economics front.